Mr. Durham, this seems to all started with one person, but I don't see his name in your report. I see it in Mueller's report 89 times. Who did Mr. Papadopoulos meet with that gave him this supposed Russian information?
When Mr. Papadopoulos was interviewed by the FBI, he had identified Joseph Misfud as a person who had provided him that information.
Did you interview Joseph Misfud?
We attempted to interview him. We pursued every lead that we had. We talked to a lawyer that he had in Europe, but we never were able to actually make contact with him so we could interview him.
Do you think he's a Western source? Is he associated with Western intelligence?
It's hard to say who Mr. Misfud is associated with. He was tied up with Link University, Mr. Scotti, who had involvement in the Italian government, and they were acquainted. Hard to say who Misfud.
I'm going to yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Gates.
Hard to say who Misfud is. He's the guy who started the whole thing. We've known it for years. Go ahead and play the video.
When the special counsel's office interviewed Misfud, did he lie to you guys too?
Can't get into that.
Did you interview Misfud?
Can't get into that.
Is Misfud Western intelligence or Russian intelligence?
Can't get into that.
Well, I'm reading from your report. Misfud told Papadopoulos. Papadopoulos tells the diplomat tells the FBI opens the investigation July 31st, 2016, and here we are 3 years later, July of 2019, the country's been put through this, and the central figure who launches it all lies to us, and you guys don't hunt him down and interview him again, and you don't charge him with a crime. Maybe a better course of action is to figure out how the false accusation started. Maybe it's to go back and actually figure out why Joseph Misfud was lying to the FBI. And here's the good news. Here's the good news. That's exactly what Bill Barr is doing. And thank goodness for that. That's exactly what the Attorney General and John Durham are doing.
Well, Mr. Durham, was that what you were doing?
I'm sorry, is that what?
Was finding out who Misfud was what you were doing?
We pursued that avenue, yes.
Right, but was he, this whole thing was an op, Mr. Durham. This wasn't like a bumbling, fumbling FBI that like couldn't get FISA straight. They ran an op. So who put Misfud in play? You don't know, do you?
I do not know that. I can't give you the answer.
For years, you had years to find out the answer to what Mr. Jordan said was the seminal question, and you don't have it. And it just begs the question whether or not you were really trying to find that out. Because it's one thing to criticize the FBI for their FISA violations, to write a report. They've been criticized in plenty of reports. Some have referred to your work as just a repackaging and regurgitation of what the Inspector General already told us. So if you weren't going to do what Mr. Jordan said you were going to do in that video and give us the basis for all of it, what's this all been about?
Well, I'm not exactly sure the import of your question. If your question is, did we try to locate and interview Mr. Misfud, the answer is yes.
Why didn't you subpoena?
We expended.
Wait, why didn't you subpoena him to a grand jury?
I'm sorry, why not?
Why didn't you send him a grand jury subpoena?
Mr. Misfud? You'd have to find Mr. Misfud before you could serve a grand jury subpoena on him.
Well, you guys were out in Italy. Was it you and Bill Barr looking for authentic pasta over there, or Misfud?
No, we not. We were looking for information that might help us locate Misfud.
But you know who I think could probably locate him? The features of Western intelligence and possibly our own government that put him in play. Like, your report seems to be less an indictment of the FBI and more of an inoculation, lowercase I, of course. And like many inoculations, it may have worse consequences down the road. We'll have some time to discuss this matter further, but it's just hard to like pretend as though this was a sincere effort when you don't get to the fundamental thing that started the whole deal. I yield back.
I was away from my family for 4 years, essentially doing this investigation. My view is a sincere effort. The fact that you can't find somebody overseas should not come as a big surprise.
Could you find Azra's hurt?
Reclaiming my time, is he alive or dead?
So, for everyone who thinks a certain letter of the alphabet is full of shit, right? We was all told about this in 2017. Now, what you just watched on that video is a load of men talk about a man who, they all know who he is, they all know what he's done, but none of them are actually allowed to say it. they will sit there and say he's a Russian spy, he's a Mossad spy. Some people will say he's dead. Some people will say he never existed. But he is MI6. And Boris Johnson is the man who put him in play. Right? That's what they're all talking about. Now, either Boris Johnson set Donald Trump up, or Boris Johnson helped Donald Trump set the Democrats up. Now, hindsight is 2020, and after all these years now, because this has been going on since, what, 2015? Q came on the scene, 2017, 6 or 7 years this now. And in hindsight, what's happened, right? Trump's caught them all. So they all thought they were setting Trump up, and Trump has caught them all. And Boris Johnson has been involved. He was the foreign secretary when all this was going on. Check it out. Joseph Misfud and him pictured together. Nobody wants to talk about him, where he's from, who he is, what intelligence. He seems to work for all the intelligence services, but it was Boris Johnson that put him in play. It was Christopher Steele, MI6, who was one that set up that document. And it has come back round and bit them all in the arse. And it ain't over yet. But the truth is Boris Johnson is the man they're all talking about. That is it. Boris Johnson put Joseph Misfud in play.